Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Stop Shitting on Yourself. I am Jessica.
And I'm Jamie. How's your week been, Jessica?
It's been actually a pretty good week this week. It was very quiet at work. Is that weird? Like a quiet week at work equals a good week?
You know what? No, I'd take that. I would take that.
Yeah, so it was a quiet week at work, so relatively good. Hey, no complaints here. What about you?
That's
How was your
awesome.
week?
My week was pretty busy, a little
Mm.
chaotic because the schedules were changing a bunch. Um, so because of that, I wanted to de-stress. And one way I've been de-stressing for a while now, ever since
Mm.
quarantine started, is going on TikTok for hours and hours,
Oh.
mindlessly scrolling through a bunch of videos.
Yes, I hear you.
So I recently came across a video and I follow this account too because he's like hilarious, right? His account is, I think I want to say it is 121 Go. And this dude named Rigo, right? And he does this whole skit on TikTok about like toxic people.
Oh.
Yeah, so he'll play these different characters, he'll put on these false lashes and put on wigs and stuff. And he's like, hello, my fellow toxicas. And he'll act out as he'll act as if he's a bunch of like toxic women just in a meeting and like planning the next like toxic thing that they're gonna do, right? And it's hilarious because he'll do that with women and men too. But I recently came across one of his most recent TikTok videos, and he was talking about how I guess like one of the ladies, she was gonna make a fake Insta account so she can stalk her dude.
Oh.
And it was hilarious. Like, you all got to go see it. But I started wondering, like, oh, how many of my friends have actually done this before? Right. Because I feel like we've all kind of been at a point where we've been pushed to our limits. But how many of us have really gone past that and done something like that? And I wanted to ask you, Jessica, have you ever done that before? Like, created a fake account to view someone's profile?
No, I've never done that before. I mean, we've all been there. Like we've all stalked our exes or like our ex's new boo or whatever, but no, I've never created a new account. That's a little extreme. If I'm going to go
Okay.
stalk them and if they find out, like whatever.
So you're okay with that? It's like,
I'm
let it be
okay with
known.
it. Yeah, let it be known. I mean, it's a little bit embarrassing, but whatever. Like, I'll move on.
Okay.
I've
Okay.
I don't think I've accidentally ever like liked anything, so maybe that's why I'm okay with
Mm,
it. I feel like if I've
yeah,
actually ever like liked anything, that maybe just don't do it.
that would
But
be
no, I've never
terrible.
done it before. Do you know anyone who's created a fake account?
No, I don't know anybody personally because once again, like I was wondering how many of my friends have actually done this because I don't think
Yeah.
that's a conversation that I've had with my friends. Um,
Would you tell
it's
me
like,
if you had one?
yes, I would. I'd be like, Jessica, look what I
Check this
created.
out.
I know, right? But I haven't done that myself either because I just think it's kind of
Mm,
personally, I think it's kind of weird. Like, why create
yeah.
a fake account to view somebody's account? I don't know. I mean, if you really want to snoop and you really want to see what this other person is doing, then okay, you do you, boo. But that's just not me. But I
Yeah.
have been contacted by fake accounts before.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah. And I realized I was like, oh, this person probably like, I don't know, was obsessed with the partner that I was with, or they knew the partner that I was with, or they had some kind of history and they wanted to, you know, put a little bit of turbulence in the relationship that I was in previously. I've gotten
Oh.
that before.
Okay, I've
And
never
I
even
was,
gotten that before.
oh,
So,
I mean, hey, it happens, right? Like people actually do take that step when they're kind
yeah,
of feeling
yeah.
a little, I don't know, desperate, or
Yeah.
maybe
No,
just curious. Maybe they're curious. I don't know.
yeah, totally. I mean, I think, relationships are hard. Like when you're heartbroken, I guess you can do all sorts of maybe weird things.
You know what?
Maybe
That's
not
so
weird,
true.
but just all sorts of things that could potentially be not good for you.
That is so true. I feel like when you are in a relationship and you do like get invested so much, like you're you're mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually just like really invested in this relationship and that person, it does drive you to do a lot of things that you probably didn't even imagine yourself to do. So I get that. I get it. So I guess I can't give too much shit to people who actually do that, but just saying it is a little like, that is a bit toxic for not just that is a bit toxic for yourself if you're doing that. Like, why put yourself in that situation? I don't know.
Yeah.
What do
Well,
you
I
think?
guess okay, that's a good question. Like how do you define like a toxic relationship? Like is there, because
Mm,
I feel like being like a toxic relationship, there's so many different definitions and I'm sure there's like a clinical definition of a toxic relationship. But I feel like there's so many things that happen within a relationship that could potentially turn toxic too, right? Maybe it's like the gray zone toxic, like it could turn toxic and then like the absolutely totally toxic.
yes. No, I agree. I think in a relationship at a certain point in your relationship or certain points, maybe even it might be more than like one time, but there's a point where, both people can be toxic to one another. And it stems from like underlying issues that weren't resolved, maybe. And so that's when like the gray zones kind of hit. But
Yep, yep.
I agree. There's a bunch of like hardcore, this is toxic type of
Mhm, mhm.
behaviors. And I actually, because I was so curious and I wanted to ask you, I actually like looked it up and a lot of
Okay.
things, there were a lot of definitions on Google. And
Mm.
as you all know, we love to search things up on Google because Google is always
Yes.
right.
Yes,
So
yes.
there were a few definitions, but I wanted to kind of read maybe a couple that I found that I thought kind of encompasses the meaning of a toxic relationship. So one said it's when one or both people prioritize love over the three core components of a healthy relationship, which is respect, trust, and affection. Apparently, according to one of the sites from Google,
Okay.
right?
I didn't
But
even
it's
know that those are there's 3 core, components to a healthy relationship. I mean, it makes sense, like respect, you need to respect each other.
mhm,
Trust, 100%. If there's no trust in a relationship, I feel like that's where a lot of those, like, potentially what we call, like, gray zone toxic behaviors happen.
right.
Um, I don't know about affection.
Well, how do you like show love? I think that's wouldn't that be like love languages type of thing?
Oh,
Like
okay.
how you
Okay,
show
yeah, I guess
love?
that's true. Yeah, I think, like, immediately when I see as, like, affection, it's like, specific love language, but I guess you're right. It could be, like, all different kinds of ways you show love.
And then it also said it's a toxic relationship or a toxic behavior is also when you're emotionally, mentally, and sometimes physically damaging to your partner,
Oh, okay, okay. That makes a
which
lot more sense.
right, right. And so when I read that definition, I was like, you know what? That kind of encompasses what I think a toxic relationship or toxic behavior would be,
Mhm,
because
mhm.
it is like damaging, it is harmful to your partner in one way or
Yeah.
another. And in this case, emotionally, mentally, and sometimes even physically. I've heard stories from my friends where
Mm.
their their significant others were, I guess, comparing their relationship to another person's. Like, for
Oh.
example, for example, maybe another couple of theirs went on a vacation and the boyfriend or the girlfriend did something for one another and it was super sweet and romantic. And of course, like if you're in a relationship, you can talk about that and be like, oh, isn't this so sweet? Like, oh, that's so cute, right? Cool, you can share that. But the moment that it becomes toxic is when you kind of put that expectation on your partner. And so I've had friends
Mhm.
like kind of complain and kind of talk to me about it where they were like, yo, my partner literally was just like, oh, this person did this for their boyfriends. How come you can't do that for me? Yeah. And I think that's when it's like, you know what? You know what? If you want somebody to do that for you, go find somebody who's going to do that for you. Don't come to me and tell me that I'm not doing enough or compare me to another relationship or another person because I think that's when it becomes pretty toxic. It's like,
Oh, yeah,
let's not
yeah.
compare other people in that way. And yet some people
Totally.
do that?
Well, I think a big part of it, it's like, like the Hollywood effect, right? Like a really big part of, I feel like my 20s, like I
Mhm.
guess the start of my dating life, it's really unlearning everything that I thought
Oh
I
my
knew about
gosh.
relationships,
Yes, exactly,
right?
exactly.
Like everything that you learn about in Hollywood, I feel like a little bit less now, but like all the rom-coms, like it's not realistic, like they're not going to, I don't know, like fly you out to Paris one day and have this like super romantic thing, or like they're not gonna like run after you and like beg for forgiveness like after you had a huge argument, or run in the rain after you. I don't know. I could go on and on about rom-coms
Yeah.
and how they're wrong. But I feel like so much of my like initial stages, like baby stages of me being in a relationship, it's like unlearning, like, oh, okay, like that's bad expectation of being in a relationship.
Right. And I totally agree because when I was a lot younger, like way back one day in college, sometime way long ago, right? Like I was dating somebody during I think my freshman sophomore year ish, and that relationship actually went on for a lot longer than I had kind of expected it to. But
Mm.
I was so young that I thought I knew what I wanted in a relationship, but it turned out I really didn't know jack
Okay.
because a lot of the things that the significant other was trying to, I guess, impose on me, I should have known better at the time and was should have been able to kind of point out like, oh, this person is being manipulative. Oh, this person is trying to control me. Oh, this person is wanting to make sure I don't hang out with other boys or men, or I guess boys at that age, right? Um, so I should have known better because there were moments, for example, where I thought it was being protective. And it's like, oh, that's so cute. Like they don't, oh, they're worried about me, blah, 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 blah. And I thought it was so cute at that age. But then later on, after like 2 years into the relationship or 3 years into the relationship, I started realizing, oh, this is actually really toxic because this dude was trying to give me permission of like what I could and could not wear at one point.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Whoa.
it turned into that because initially it was more of, oh, I don't want you to like hang out with these like boys because like you never know. It's not that I don't trust you, it's just I don't trust them.
The other person. Okay.
This
Okay.
that stupid saying. But as a young kid, you're like, oh, that's so cute. You trust me, but you don't trust them. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. And you like twirl your hair and you have these eyes, right? But then, as you grow older, you realize, holy hold on, hold on. Like, let's take a step back and let's see all the manipulative things that you've done so that I was just yours and yours only. And so at one point in that relationship, I realized it was just totally toxic and I had to be done and over with because it got to a point once again where I had I not that I had to get permission, but it was up to that point where I felt like I had to get permission from somebody or else they'd be really mad and they would like break off the relationship. And I was afraid of that. I wasn't okay
Oh
with
my
that.
gosh. Yeah, that's horrible. That's
Yeah.
horrible. And I
Yes.
think like the weird thing is, I guess looking back and looking back at like maybe all the toxic relationships that we've seen, they
Mhm.
all somehow end up get going longer than it should. Right? It's like the toxic ones that are hard to break.
Yeah, you're so right about that. I don't know why it's so hard to break. Maybe it's because like you yourself, you're growing too, and you're learning to recognize those red flags and you're learning to recognize what is
Mhm.
toxic and what isn't. And also you're learning what is toxic about you. Like what are
Mm,
some traits
yeah.
that you are kind of, I guess, showing your partner that is also toxic, and it just becomes like this vicious cycle of like toxic behavior and then love and affection, toxic
Yeah.
behavior, love and
Yeah.
affection, that I feel like it's such a hard cycle to break at one point.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why it goes on for so much longer than it should, you
Yeah, and
know?
I think, the crazy thing is like it doesn't take two toxic people to create a toxic relationship. Like sometimes as, just two individuals, you could be just perfectly fine people.
Right.
And, just when you come together and when you're trying to figure out each other's like quirks, likes, dislike, whatever it is, or even just like the past happens, um, that's when it becomes toxic. And those are the things that are just so hard to catch in the moment. But over time, as you sort of keep doing it, at some point, hopefully you catch yourself and say, like, holy like that was that was a really toxic thing I did.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
I think you made a really good point there. Like you could be you might not be a toxic person, the other person might not be a toxic person, but when you get together and happens
Yeah.
and there's
Yeah.
conflict that you don't resolve, then yeah, at one point or another, like both of you might just be really toxic for one another. And that could
Mm.
also be resolved too if you work it
Yeah.
out, if you learn to communicate. Sometimes couples go to therapy for that too, and you definitely come out for the better. But
Mhm.
if that doesn't happen, then it just becomes a really toxic relationship for both. And then it goes done. Like you're done. It ends,
Yeah. Totally, totally.
but it ends a lot long, like a lot later than it actually
Yeah.
should.
No, 100%, 100%. So I want to go back a little bit because something that you said earlier reminded me of something that I feel like is pretty common in, I
Mhm.
want to say, younger relationships, like the idea of
Okay.
like, being controlling and not wanting you to hang out with, other people,
Mhm.
wanting you to be theirs, checking phones. Have you
Oh my God.
have you done it? And I will be the first one to admit that I have, in the past. Now with my husband, like we both have each other's face ID on our phone, so it's like there's really nothing to hide. Um, but I'll be the first to admit I've definitely done it in the past, like in my past relationships. And it might have come from a place of like, there's a suspicion, or just in general like I'm just really curious. But I know sometimes it could actually get very, very toxic, so like I'm curious, have you done anything like that?
You know, I almost got to a point where I did that, but I
Mm.
haven't. So I in my previous relationships that I was in, it was always very like secure in terms of, using each other's phones. In one relationship, like we would just kind of like, it was a normal thing for us to kind of go through our pictures and be like reminisce through all the pictures that we took together on each
Mhm.
other's phones, or even just like messaging for one another, right? Hey, can you text this person this, or call this person for me? Or like, can I see like what comes up on your social media feed because it's so different than mine? So like, it was a very mutual, like healthy type of phone use thing, I guess,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But there was a moment where in this one particular relationship, I was in that same spot as you just kind of mentioned, where you were becoming a little bit more suspicious of the partner. And I had very good reason to be suspicious. And it turned out that my suspicions were confirmed.
Yes, oh
Okay.
my god. Sixth
So,
sense.
right. Like girls have this like gut feeling. And a lot of times that gut feeling is so freaking
Yeah,
true. Sometimes you hope
yeah.
that it's not,
Mhm.
but I mean, there's something about like us ladies, we have some kind of sense where we can like sense out those cheaters, you know what I mean? But so there's this one time like that with that same like partner where we were very open with each other's, phone use, I guess you can say. At one point they started to get really antsy whenever I held their phone. And
Oh,
I was
oh,
like, wait,
okay.
what's going on? Like, we were never like this. You were never antsy about me like checking your phone at all. And at one point, this dude threw out the worst excuse ever. Like, if you could not find the worst excuse,
Here it is.
yeah, it was so bad. It was so bad. So I kept asking, I was like, why, like, what's up? Why are you so anxious about me going through your phone? Like we do this all the time, like why can't I look at something, or why can't we do this, or why can't I play games on your phone or whatever, right?
Mhm.
And his excuse was, I'm just really, I get anxious because, I'm just not financially like stable right now. And I just feel like you're going to look through my bank statements.
What?
And I was like, huh?
What?
When did I ever look through your bank statements? Number one. Number two, I already know you're not in a like in the best situation with your finances. I don't give a shit, okay? And then number three, what the literal what?
Wow, that's
It made
worse
no
than
sense.
like I have no, I don't know, I have no batteries left, or like I have no data. Any of those two could
Right.
have been slightly better than that one.
Right? But bank
Wow.
I was gonna check his bank statements. I was like, what in the world do you mean? Like, who does that? Right?
Yeah.
Like, I even know the password to your bank account. I don't even know that. The hell?
Yeah.
So it was just so odd. And I remember being in that space where now there's this whole like air of suspicion. And I
Mm-hmm.
was wondering, well, is this guy cheating on me? What is this guy doing? And I remember when he was like in the shower, I almost reached over and looked through his phone. I was so tempted, but I remember thinking at the moment, I was like, let's not be that crazy. I was like, let's not do that. I'm like, let's not do that. If I'm gonna find out, I'm probably gonna find out. I have my suspicions. But the thing is, like, ladies, if you got to look through somebody's phone because you are suspicious of their freaking behavior, by all means, I now say freaking do it. I just now say freaking do it. Okay? Not all the time. Okay? Like I don't think you should just do it whenever because you feel like someone's cheating, but like there's absolutely no reason why. That
Mm-hmm.
could just stem from like our own like past traumas and our own like insecurities about something. And
Yeah,
if that's the
yeah.
case, I feel like that's when it is a little bit toxic. But
Mm-hmm.
if you really feel like, oh, this person is cheating on me, this person has
Yeah.
another boo, this person is being really suspicious, yeah, go ahead and check. But I mean, if you already feel that way, get the out of there.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. Like when you have that, like when trust is broken, it's so hard to gain that trust back.
Yeah.
Um and it's, it's one of those things where, was it like two rights doesn't make a wrong? Is that
Hmm.
a saying? Right?
Hmm.
Which is,
No,
when something
no, two wrongs don't make a right.
is that
Why would two rights make a wrong?
oh,
Two wrongs don't make like eye for an eye doesn't make it right.
right, right.
But that's like
Okay.
super Hammurabi's code. Like Hammurabi was all about like eye for an eye. Like you did this to me, I'm gonna do this to you, right? But
Mm,
that
mm, mm,
saying goes
mm.
against that, where it's
Yeah.
two wrongs don't make it
Well,
right.
anyway, whatever that saying is, clear. I'm
Okay.
so sorry, English teacher who taught me idioms. Um, sometimes like when trust is broken, and I guess going back to the Google definition, right? Like respect and trust is one of those like key core components of a
Mhm.
relationship. When that's
Right.
broken, it's so hard to mend. But I think you brought up a really good point. Like sometimes these things happen because of the past traumas that happened to us, or
Mhm.
like there could have just been, it might not even be like past relationship, just could have been past things that happen in our lives that we
Yeah.
bring into every single relationship. And because we all grew up differently, we all have dealt with different things in our lives, we all bring in something positive or negative into a relationship. A lot of times, like communication goes a really long way. So if you go into a relationship and say, hey, I've had these past traumas or things that's happened to me in the past that I could potentially bring into the relationship. So know that, work with me, don't give me a reason to not trust you. And as long as your partner isn't giving you a reason to not trust you, I feel like you can just, you can work it out. Now knowing what I know now, I probably wouldn't advocate checking someone else's phone.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. Like, do whatever you need to like get evidence or get receipts, but
Right.
it's just say, I don't know, like one of those things. It's so easy to then fall into something else, and then like
Mm.
if you don't find something on the phone, then does your mind spin and try to go do something else? Like, I don't know, it's just too much. Like for
Mm.
me, it's if I sense something, I'm just gonna say something. And I
Okay.
get it, like not every partner is super straightforward and every relationship is different, but I don't know, I just, now knowing everything that I've learned in my past relationship, like it's
Mhm.
easiest just to be straightforward and talk to them about it.
I think that's so much easier said than done though. Being straightforward with someone. And yes, like also do like to confront people about whatever I'm feeling. But at the same time, sometimes it takes me some time to process. So this is just on a personal level. Like, I will be more honest about how I'm feeling, but it does take me some time to really think about, well, why do I even feel this way? What's what's triggering me? And it takes some time for me to think about the space that I'm in before I even go to my partner to share that. So,
Okay.
yes, you can be straightforward, but it might take a while. But also, I feel like it's so much easier said than done in certain situations because maybe a topic is really sensitive for somebody. Maybe
True.
it's very highly triggering for someone and it makes you feel really uncomfortable talking about it at the moment. Um, even if you want to confront somebody about something, maybe they've already reacted a certain way and they've lashed out at you for opening up, that it makes you feel like, okay, I don't know if I can comfortably tell this person another thing that I'm bothered with. So I think when it comes to everyone's relationships, it's so different. And being straightforward is so much easier said than done, depending on, once it's all very situational. So I feel
Yeah.
like anything that we talk about today with like anything that's toxic is more from like our personal experience,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yeah.
though we can say like, oh, these things are somewhat general, obviously there are certain cases where it cannot be applied to, you
True.
know?
Okay. Yeah, that's true. I
So
mean, even this conversation that we're having, right? How we're dealing with potentially, checking phones or whatnot, like just the way that we're looking at it are from two different
Mhm.
lenses. So,
Right.
you can imagine, like, given the specific circumstance that you fall into, things that you've already
Mhm.
happened, or, things that you've already dealt with your partner in the past, like it could all, I don't know. Relationships are hard.
They're so complicated. It's not black or
Yeah.
white. It's
It's,
very, no, it's all very situational. It's all
yeah.
very like
It's
dependent
like murky
on.
waters. Mhm.
And everyone has their own relationship and you either figure it out or you don't. You enter a new one or you don't. But
Yeah.
um I would say like a hard no would be anything that's
Oh, yeah.
physically
No.
damaging. That's something that like you need to get out of. But once again, even those who experience like physical abuse, like it's hard for some people to get out because they're already like mentally and emotionally kind of manipulated. So
Totally. Yeah.
even though it's so easy for us to say like, oh, we shouldn't do this, or this is so toxic, and therefore if you're in this toxic relationship you need to bounce, it's so easy to say, yet it's hard to get out of that, no matter how much you
Yeah.
want to, no matter how much you like recognize the toxic traits that maybe like you're exhibiting or your partner is exhibiting. It's sometimes really hard to get out of that because you're already so emotionally involved.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's not even emotionally involved, right? Like families come into play. You might have
Yeah,
kids, you might be tied
right,
together financially. There's just so many things. I'm like,
right.
oh my gosh, my like psych 101 is coming back.
I know, right? Both of us, we study psychology, so we're here like, huh.
What is the proper way to deal with it? I mean, again, like it's so hard. I'm sure there's, again, clinically there's proper ways to deal with a lot of things, but when you're
Mhm.
put in a certain situation and when, your emotions are just like up and down and constantly just like trying to navigate who you are in something, it becomes really hard.
Right. And like at one point, maybe, I'm sure we were both toxic in one relationship, or even like, I don't know, I'm
Yeah.
single, but in the current relationship that you are in too, I'm sure like we can
Hmm.
think back to moments where we're like, oh, dang, that was actually pretty toxic. Like,
Hmm.
I need
Hmm.
to make sure I don't do that anymore. And we learn from that. I think even now in my late 20s, I'm still learning to do that, where I'm still learning not to project. I'm still learning to like talk about my feelings and how it affects me. And I'm also learning to accept the reactions that I get from the other person because I can't control what they're going to say and what they're going to think and how they're going to react to what I am telling them. So if their decision is to leave, okay, I need to be okay with that. If their decision is to work things out, then great. But I have to also learn to accept whatever the result may be. And that's so freaking hard, man.
It It is. I mean, I think what you've brought up is the perfect example of this isn't something that we typically think of for a normal, like, quote unquote toxic relationship. When I think, at least in my mind, when someone says toxic relationship, I think, oh, you're yelling at each other, you're
You're
aggressive against each other, you're
throwing
throwing.
things. Yeah. And you're
Exactly.
calling each other names and bleep that and bleep this and you're the worst.
Yeah, and I think what we don't think about, and I think that's why a lot of times toxic relationships end up dragging out so much longer, is because they're not the throwing things at you and yelling at each other. It could just be like what's happening internally. Sometimes it's not about just yelling and screaming at each other. It's about like how you're dealing with actual day-to-day conflicts too. That makes it a toxic relationship.
Right. And also like when you are learning the communication styles of, you and your partner, I think it's really important to keep in mind that you need to know how you communicate and what works best for you, because you can't just analyze your partner and not
Right.
analyze yourself and not know exactly how you would like to communicate or want to be communicated with, like you need to know that about yourself as well. And I think it takes some time for people to really sit down and come to terms with their communication style, or even sometimes it just takes a bunch of relationships, to understand that as well, because there might be certain relationships that you've been through and those were learning ships. I would say
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good
you
one. Yep.
learn from them. You don't really, they might not be your forever boo, but you learned from it, whether it's learning how to love somebody or learning, how to be loved or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I definitely don't have answers. I don't have an advice. It's not an advice podcast, so
it's not, it's just, I think this is what we do on a daily basis anyway. We talk about these things.
yeah.
Um, and so if you find any of the things that we said helpful, then great. But it's just us like navigating through
Yeah.
literally the shoulds and should nots of freaking adulthood, because adult
Yeah.
relationships are so freaking difficult. It's not like rainbows and butterflies and cotton
No.
candy and let me buy you hot Cheetos to show you how much I love you, which honestly I would still love if somebody did that for me because I love hot Cheetos, but it's not as simple as that. There's just so many layers and so many different factors that contribute to creating a healthy relationship. And even then, it's maintaining that healthy relationship that becomes really not difficult, but it's hard work. It is hard
It's
work. And you
hard
have to
work,
be willing to
and
do that.
exactly, and it never stops. Just as much as, like keeping up with yourself and self-care never stops. You're supposed to constantly love yourself. Like relationship never stops just because you found the formula 5 years ago. There's so many things that probably changed and happened in between that time that you got to, look at that formula again. Why am I talking about it in math?
I don't know. I don't
Math and
know.
science.
I
But
don't
yeah,
know.
there's
Love is not a formula, but
love is not a formula, but I think at some point you find your rhythm. But
Mhm.
life continues to throw different things at you that like throws off
Right.
that rhythm, and you have to find it again. I think that's why relationships are hard, because it's also about making those really difficult moments of your life work with each other.
Yeah, navigating that is so difficult, but it is something that, I feel like there's a lot of rewarding things that do come out of being in a relationship with somebody that you absolutely love and adore, and someone that actually reciprocates that as well.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth the work, but it is a lot of work. So we don't have
Absolutely.
anything for you guys, but really it's just sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but you got to put in the work.
Yeah. There we go.
So, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that is it from us today. Let us know in the comment section below if you've ever been a part of a toxic relationship, if
Mhm.
you've ever done anything in those sort of like gray areas that could potentially turn into a toxic
Yeah.
relationship. And let us know how you got out of them, because I think it's so important for us to learn from each other too.
Right. Or even if you have like general relationship questions, obviously, we're not
Yeah.
a relationship guru, but we
No.
can definitely give you, I don't know, our personal experiences with something, and that might help. But if you do have a question that you want to ask us, feel free to leave a comment. Make sure you click that like button and subscribe so you can find us every Wednesday on this channel.
And that's it. We'll see you guys next week.
All right, bye.
Bye.